Hey everybody, and welcome to this third episode of the Automated Millionaire channel. I'm excited because today we're going to have a little bit more of real content. The content is basically of where the rubber meets the road. So we're going to look at some of the secrets of the top business turnaround agents. So the turnaround agents, the business consultant who is able to enter into a business, maybe even in an industry of which he or she has no prior knowledge, and yet can help a struggling business, maybe even a business that's really struggling, maybe close to bankruptcy, and help the business owner and their team turn that business around, and within mere weeks or mere months, turn it into a successful endeavor, and yet again get that business back to prosperity, and now have a system in place that business owner and their team can continue subsequent and after the business consultant has left the business again. The first two episodes were a lot more about an introduction of who this channel is for, and just to reiterate what that is, it is for the small and medium-sized business owner who would like to have a much better business, which basically boils down to making more money, making life a little bit easier, making the sense of driving that business and running the business, operating the business better and easier, more smoothly, more systematic, and maybe even such a sense that the business owner can transcend into becoming a true business owner, meaning that the business will require no physical or everyday input from the business owner, but the team can actually run the business in the business owner's absence. That way the business owner can have that freedom that the business owner probably entered business with that intention in mind of creating that freedom. So not only will this be insights to how you can make more money, but also how you can create the lifestyle that you probably hoped to get back in the day when you entered business. Now, the other part of the first two episodes was also a lot to do with why am I doing this? Just again, very briefly, I'm doing this because when I went out in a physical form, on-site, in person, to help many, many clients of all kinds of industries all over the United States and all over Canada, I could really only help one client at a time. And while that was great, and the transformation that I saw in the clients' eyes, and in their lifestyles and lives, and the employees and their families' lifestyles and so on, then that was remarkable, and it was a great sense of pleasure and so on. But in reality, I felt like, this is information, this is knowledge that's learnable for pretty much anybody. And it changes lives to such a degree that I wanted to reach a bigger audience. I wanted to help many more people than I could ever possibly hope to do by going out there physically, in person, on site. Because again, in person, on site, I can really deal with only one company at the time. But when I bring this information online, such as on the podcast or on the video channel or through my programs and coaching, then I can actually help many, many more people all at the same time, and without anybody actually diminishing the return that they get from the information. So that's why we're here. Today, we're gonna dive into some real content. So I want today to start off the series. So it's gonna be the next few episodes here. It's gonna be the series of the secrets of an automated millionaire and the secrets of a top business turnaround agent. So these secrets are things that you can apply in your business, and thereby turning yourself into a top business turnaround agent for your business. So in case your business needs that extra help to really turn around to much grander results, you're in the right place. Now, if your business is already doing really well, I would still venture to say that you can take the same content here and just take your business to an even higher level of higher success, more money made, more freedom gained, and more time to do and follow other pursuits, and a much more smoothly well-run organization. So in one of the first 2 episodes, we spoke a little bit about how, as a business consultant, I would, fly out in the evening, get very little knowledge of the business I was going to come in the following morning and help. And maybe it was even in an industry that I never dealt with before and so on. And, the success rate had to be sky high, because not only did we charge a lot of money per hourly basis I was there, but it also was such that we guaranteed that the client would have a return on their investment for at least $2 for every dollar they spent with us. So in other words, it wasn't good enough that I could come in, help a business by giving them some good ideas, some theories, some ideas about things, maybe some tools and so on. If those things did not transform the business and the results, so that for every $100, $1,000 they spent with me, that they would get at least twice up back. Now, the typical success ratio that we would see would be like maybe even 4 to 7 times the invested capital within a 12-month period following the conclusion of the engagement with me as a business consultant. So you might say, well, that's a lot of pressure on the business consultant. There was a lot of pressure on me to perform on a really high level to actually really get the client a result. And you're absolutely right. So yes, it was a lot of pressure, but it was also very challenging and also very stimulating, because we were actually able to do these kind of results over and over and over. And that wasn't just me, but it was actually also a lot of my colleagues who were equally very, very good at what they did of turning businesses around. And so you might ask yourself, well, how is it that they can do so when, business owners, and maybe even yourself, or certainly a lot of my clients, were truly, truly struggling with their business? And so outside of the fact that, well, maybe a lot of those who are struggling, they are lacking a little bit of an understanding of some of the business dynamics and how things work in together. And maybe they just haven't gained that awareness of how to look at certain things and so on. But at the end of the day, a big part of the success secrets that we carried were that we have a system. So we have a methodology, a method that we use when we enter a business. So this is what I would call is the number 1 secret of a top business turnaround agent. It is that we have a system, we have a method. So we are going to talk a little bit more about the method, and that will reveal some of all these other secrets. Now, before we continue, if you want to dive in deeper and you have the access maybe ideally to a desktop or something, I suggest that you go onto my website, theautomatedmillionaire.com. And if you look at one of the tabs, it'll have a free training session. Currently, that is actually showing a free training session much more in depth than we will do here over these episodes of this system. It shows you very much with audio and visual, whereas on this episode here we'll talk more about the audio part of it, even if you're watching the video of this. But on the website, theautomatedmillionaire.com, and then one of the tabs has a free training. Currently, you'll be able to find this free training that is going to go much more deeper in depth, and I'll actually schematically draw out the picture for you, and it's going to be very substantial value for you if you want to follow that and maybe see how you can implement this system for you in your business. Now, moving on, we can go ahead and then say, well, if I come in there as a top business turnaround agent and I know very little, if indeed anything, about the business I'm in, the current situation, the challenges that they're facing, what seems to be their ailment and trouble and so on, and what is the status quo, well, that leads to secret number 2, which very naturally will be like, well, if I don't know anything, I have to ask a lot of questions. So secret number 2 is that the best business consultants ask a lot of questions. In fact, when it comes to actually teaching and instructing our clients, one of the better methods of maybe cementing, not only getting their attention on full focus, but also getting their comprehension and their retention of the new information, of new how-tos and the new insights. The better way to really get there is by asking questions. So although I, as a consultant, may know what the answer is, what I'm looking for, what the results of what I'm looking for is, and so on, then I might pose it as questions to the client so as to engage the client in such a level that they really focus on it, and again, they get the retention. It seems that brain science seems to tell us that the human mind can really very hardly ignore a question being asked. So if I just tell you, then soon enough we glaze over, soon enough we're thinking about all kinds of other things that we have on our mind, and we don't really pay attention to the lessons learned. So think about that in your business when you are up against anything that you're like, well, why are we getting these results? Well, go to your team, your employees and so on, look at the processes and look at how we're doing things, why are we doing things, and keep asking questions, and you'll reveal much more about what's underlying the issues. And maybe it'll start uncovering things that you say, well, that wouldn't make sense that we make it this way. Why don't we do it that way? Case in point, I was helping a client. It was a rubber mold company, and they had certain molds from a client that came back in that they would need to redo over for their new pressing machines and so on, and they would need to basically mill down the size of the thickness of this mold. And amongst other things, to cut a long story short, these molds had a ton of screws in there that would have to be taken out. Then you would mill it down, and then subsequently you would have to put in screws, maybe the same screws, but now they would have to be cut short to fit in thinner mold now. Now these screws, eventually after, we went over the process over and over and over, I learned that they were taken out manually. Now, to me, it just seems obvious that, you would use a power drill or something to take out the screws, certainly if the screws were easily maneuverable. But after asking enough questions, all of a sudden, it was real to me that they actually did so manually. So of course we looked at, well, how long does that take and how long would it take with a power drill? And of course there was a lot of hours collectively saved by moving away from the manual over to the power drill. Now this would not have been found out unless I have either observed it and asked questions, is this a better way to do it, or might there be a better way to go around it? Or indeed, seeing that I didn't observe it, I found out by merely asking questions. And so what I want you to understand or think and remember is that very often we have a clear concept about what must be going on, but very often that's not necessarily what is going on. So by asking questions, how are we doing it? Explain to me the process, show me, demonstrate for me, or whatever. Then all of a sudden we begin to see a universe of potential avenues that we can improve processes and save time, save money, make the collective cost of producing something, make that less, which then drives profit up. So again, ask questions. And we ask these questions of anybody. So when I come into a business, I sit with the business owner, and I go deep into what's the problem, what's the current situation. I go very deep into what is it that they wish to achieve. So what is the goal, that the outcome that they're looking for? And I might even dive deeper by asking and asking and asking deeper questions, or maybe the same questions over and over and over, so that they will, basically you're unpeeling layer upon layer upon layer. I believe it's Tony Robbins who famously quote that, the quality of your life depends very much on the quality of questions you ask. So secret number 2 is that we ask questions, and a lot of questions. Now, secret number 3 is what you have also met before by the famous and notorious Stephen Covey in his famous book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the habits in there is that the most successful and most effective people, they begin with the end in mind. So again, going back to my questions, remember I said I asked the business owners, what is the outcome that they're looking for? What is that end dream that they hope that we transform the business to? Which very often entails also transforming and transcending the business owner, and not least the teams and the methods and processes and so on, into something else. But we gotta know what is that end outcome that we wish to gain. Dan Sullivan is a famous business coach. He has a business called Strategic Coach, and he wrote a book at some point where he had the one question. So the one question that he would ask all his clients is that, if I were to meet you again a year from now, what would have to have happened in that time for you to be really pleased with what I have helped you with? I'm probably paraphrasing here, but that's a great question. So when we go in as a business consultant or as a business turnaround agent, although we have an idea that, well, we got to get it back to profitability, we got to get it back to on the right track and so on, there may be a myriad of other things that we need to get squared away about. What does that look like? It's much easier to hit a target when you actually have a target. So we begin with the end in mind. Now, when I come into a business and it's really, very, in a very struggling position, and I need to turn it around, it may be very close to bankruptcy and maybe having a lot of debtors on its back, and maybe even lawsuits on the way, or debt collections, and difficult meeting payroll and all those things, speed is definitely of the essence. And so from that point of view, I might, draw out a bigger picture of, what is that end outcome that we're looking for, without necessarily going into all the details about what is the budget for the business. Now, if I have, or subsequently when I have more time, when I've gotten it out of the very bad rut and onto a greater path, then maybe I'll go back and then we'll say, okay, what is that end outcome? Okay, we want to bring the business from, let's say, a $4 million revenue, $4 million sales on a yearly basis, up to a $6 million a year sales. And maybe we want to bring the minus of $250,000 up to a plus of $750,000. Well, now I might go in and say, okay, let's look at what that would look at as a budget. So a budget is basically where I break out the entire fiscal year and into each calendar month, so I can kind of like see what would that track look like, what does that trajectory look like. And so basically the budget helps us become a roadmap for how are we going to get there, or what would it look like. Then maybe we need to ask more questions to find out how are we getting those results. So when I run a business on a more continuous and optimal level and so on, I always would have a budget. It is one of the secrets. It's not part of the secrets here in this order here, but that's how I would think about, well, what does that end in mind? Well, the budget is part of the end in mind, because that should show this is where we're going to land, and then I might have mapped out what that road map looks like. Now, the fourth secret that we are going to hit upon in this episode, and the fourth secret of the highly successful business consultant or a business turnaround agent, also highly successful, is that they secure commitment. If we don't have full commitment from certainly the business owner, then soon enough, the engagement is not going to work. If the commitment is not there, they are not going to take the necessary steps to get there. They're soon enough going to wean off. They're soon going to have too much focus on the money they're going to spend for the consultant or for the work of getting there, or the pain points that you would have to go through. For you and your business, it might be, just as it is very often with the clients that I serve, it's, in order for them to afford the business consultant, they might actually have to take an additional loan. They may have to, get a second mortgage. They may have to go to their mother or father or, parents-in-law or something and obtain a family loan so that they can get the expertise. And so that requires a lot of commitment, that you actually have to invest further in a business at the same time that you're really, really, scratching your head, can it even survive? Because that's the reality of it. If a business is really close to a bankruptcy, you're really scratching your head. Maybe I just need to, shut it down quickly as possible so it doesn't drain any more money, and so my debt burden does not become even bigger. But very often what we'll see is that you'll have to make additional investment into it before you can turn it into something good. We'll talk about then the additional investment into a business and what such money then would be used for, because believe it or not, it's not going to be used to pay off debts. It's going to be used to invest in profit and cash flow improving activities. But like I said, we'll get back to that a little later on. But again, the fourth secret that we will touch upon in this episode here is that they secure commitment. Commitment is ultra important, because otherwise they're not going to make the necessary steps. Another one of my mentors, John Assaraf, he usually says, if you're interested, you'll soon enough find all the excuses for why you're not continuing, why you're not doing what you need to be doing, and so on. But if you're committed, the truly committed will do whatever it takes. So, big difference. If you're just interested, you'll soon enough wean off. If you're committed, you'll do what it takes. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, let's wrap up episode number 4. Again, a very quick recap. The first secret that we have is that we have a system. So you can learn the system, and that's what I'm going to convey to you over the course of the next few episodes. And if you want a more in-depth lesson on this free training, it's available via my website, theautomatedmillionaire.com. As the tab says, free training. That is, of course, at this stage in time. There may subsequently be another training on another subject and so on. And if that's the case, you come to this episode much longer down the road, then by all means feel free to reach out to me. You can contact me via the Automated Millionaire website, and I will find a link to you so you can watch that free training. The secret number 2 is that we ask a lot of questions. Again, Tony Robbins says the quality of your life depends highly on the quality of the questions that you ask. Ask a better question, you get a better response, you get a better result, and you get a better life. And then third, we had Stephen Covey is famous for mentioning also that the most successful, they begin with the end in mind. We need to have a knowledge of where we are going, and then soon enough, a lot of how we're going to get there will reveal itself to us with the many questions that we are asking and with our activities as we go down the road. And by knowing where we are going, we also can measure, are we getting there? Are we on the trajectory to be reaching that goal? And if not, we may need to adjust our course a little bit along the way. But like I usually tell my clients, if I jump into a vehicle and I'm going from point A and I need to get to point B, and I know where point B is, I am very likely to get there, especially these days with the GPS on our phones and everything. If you jump into your car and you know a different route and so on, but you might also get there. So our routes might be different, but we can definitely get there. So with the end in mind, we have a much greater chance of actually getting there. And then finally, we talked about securing commitment. So for you, if you truly want a better result, you've got to commit to yourself to doing what's necessary. in this case here, following this, these episodes and so on, well, it might have to be that you have to endure the episodes and more episodes to learn the next step, and you have to invest a little bit of time. Then you learn something, and then now you have to implement it. Without the implementation, the knowledge is just knowledge, but it's once we begin to implement, we basically truly begin to understand it, and we can also have a certain promise in mind of reaching a result, a positive result, and getting on the right trajectory by actually implementing what you now have learned. This is Mikael Pitzner. I'm the Automated Millionaire, creator and founder of SAME, the programs that I offer, and coaching for small and medium-sized businesses who want to produce better results. I appreciate you so much. I thank you so much for following this episode here. I hope you'll share it with other people. And then I hope and invite you to come back for the next episode, where we will look at some more secrets of the system that we use as a business turnaround agent or as a high performance business consultant. I thank you so much, and I'll see you in future episodes.